All right, and we are back for part 4 of episode 4 of Life is Strange 2. So, yeah, especially if we're gonna get some music here, the choice that we just went through. I did not want to threaten Lisbeth because there was no threat Sean was going to make with that gun in his hand that I felt that I was going to follow up on. I didn't want her to call my bluff, and I was not going to shoot her. I was not going to inflict violence on her. And it's somewhat of a point of, I don't know if irritation is the right word, but Daniel has the ability to lift things up and hold them in midair. And a person like Lisbeth, with no weapon in her hand, no projectiles, no firearms, poses absolutely no threat if she is hovering 3 inches up off the ground and unable to move around or to take any action. So he could have just picked her up, slid her, a foot or two over one side. We walk right out. Lisbeth lands back on the ground, and again, if she chooses to stay inside of her burning church, so be it. There's an open door right there that she can walk out, which, by the way, she just did. So I don't understand. I don't see any value in threatening Lisbeth when the lesson, it just feels like it should be a teaching moment for Daniel. Here's an opportunity to learn about a way to use your powers to get out of a dangerous situation where nobody needs to get hurt. Somebody here is being irrational. It is Lisbeth. We can just walk right past her. We don't have to threaten her. We don't have to hurt her. We can just go. And instead, he sort of he does his own version of a pistol whip. He sort of knocks her down. It honestly feels like he learned nothing from grievously wounding his own brother. You want there to be a little bit more nuance here. And I have to say, we don't do Cam here, but I rolled my eyes when Daniel ran up to Daniel. Sorry, when Daniel rolled up to Sean and threw his arms around him and said, "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry." Because that's exactly what happened when Sean first showed up at the church. Daniel felt bad, and Daniel apologized, and Daniel wanted to say that he was sorry. And not 3 minutes later, okay, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, he was watching Sean get dragged out because we all saw what happened. So let's see, other thoughts before we go forward to the results screen. Sean really got the crap kicked out of him in this episode, physically speaking. I will be interested to discern on the results screen. Number 1, was there a non-violent way to get out of the hospital room at the very beginning? I definitely want to see on the voice actors when they come up. I want to see if, I believe the character's name in Heavy Rain was Lauren Winters, and it's a performance that I remember because there was a pre-release trailer done for Heavy Rain where the same actor did this monologue, and it was sort of auditioning for a part, and it was a very, very well done monologue, and that character sort of always stuck with me. And that's why I don't know that the FBI agent was the same person, but she not only sounded similar, but the character model looked similar, just done in a Life is Strange way. Anyway, number 1, was there a non-violent way where you don't beat up the guard? Because I feel like inflicting violence only underscores, it adds more ammunition to the idea that maybe they did kill the police officer, because look, Sean is willing to inflict violence. I definitely wanted to get out of there without inflicting violence if I possibly could have. Number 2, as discussed, I never once believed that Joey was going to help Sean escape. Joey was a nice guy. Joey was not such a nice guy that he was going to risk his job, his own freedom. I didn't know anything about his family, but he wasn't gonna do that for some dude that he met a little bit ago and they sort of get on okay. Number 3, I'll be interested to know if we get a readout on what percentage of people were able to like measure the pen, like tapping the pen, the depth perception quest, because I did it once and the pen went behind, and then I tried to fairly slightly move it forward and I missed it again in the front, and then I tried to push a little bit further back and just failed. So I would love to have a better I hope that we get a readout on how many people did successfully do that. Number 3, and hold on because it's going to come up here. So we've got Sean and Joey. Not familiar with Jamal Douglas. I thought that he did a really good job. Jane Santos. Nope, that is not her. I would recognize the name of the actor if it was presented. So, number 3, or 4, whatever. I want to talk about Karen before we get to the results screen. Here's the thing about Karen, and we all heard what she had to say. Boy, this is going to be Jolene Anderson. We all heard what Karen had to say, and I reacted very, very strongly to it, and here is why. Karen is talking about how, well, I was never intended to be a wife and a mother, and everything was happening around me, but I kept feeling like I was supposed to be happy, and I wasn't. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I want to make this part clear. That is okay. It is okay to understand that where you are in life is not where you need to be, it's not where you want to be, and that you are unhappy. What's not okay is to just walk away from your family, to just, as Sean put it, ghost them, just leave. Because ultimately, Karen was involved in the decision to bring 2 children into the world. Children that looked up to her, children that loved her, children that relied on her as their mother. And the fact that she has realized that life as a stay-at-home mom, I don't know that she was a stay-at-home mom, but life as a mother isn't for her. There's other people involved in that decision now. I do believe, and I want to make this unambiguously clear, that Karen has the right to seek out happiness. Karen has the right to seek a life that makes her happy. And if that life does involve not living with Esteban, not living with her children, that she needs more distance and more freedom, those are things that it is understandable that she might want, that she might need, that might be critically important to her. But to leave without a word, to sever communications, to say, oh, well, I didn't want to hurt you, and I left when Daniel was so young so that he wouldn't remember me. I was glad that there were responses built in there that said, no, that made it worse. That made it so much worse for him. Children have this powerful ability to believe that things that are wrong at home are their own faults. They have this ability to take responsibility for the misjudgments and the failings of the adults in their lives, that they are responsible for things going wrong between their parents. And it seems like that's something that Karen should have known and understood. If she needed to have her own space, that's okay. Even if she needed to move away, those are possibilities, but she could have gone back. She could have remained in contact with them at a minimum. At a minimum. She didn't do that, and I really had a difficult time, especially her line, and you heard I try to stay quiet because I want to hear the scene unfold just like you do. When she said, well, I took responsibility for that. She said something about, like, I understood that I had to go and I was just going to take responsibility for that. That is the opposite of what happened. She fled from her responsibilities because they didn't match what she wanted out of life. And the problem with that is that there's 2 children involved with it now. And I don't know that I need to go into it further than that. And before we move on from this topic, she does also say at one point, like let's try to, like I was talking about with the police officer in episode 1, earlier in this episode, I realized, wait, I wasn't looking at it from his perspective, that he showed up and 2 kids appear to have a lot of blood on them, and what all is happening here? Maybe there are weapons involved. Okay, fair enough. From what we can hear from Karen, it sounds like she was raised in an environment where she was brought up to expect, based on, who is it? Sorry, I'm really blanking out on the names of her parents right now. Stephen and Claire, was that it? You are in life to grow up, to become a good wife and a good mother, and that is the goal end state for you. And she always believed in her life that she wanted to travel, she wanted to roam, she wanted to see the world, she wanted to meet new people, she wanted to follow her dreams. But she bought into the way that her parents had raised her and really made a go. She made an earnest go of it. And she just realized that after the birth of her second child, she just couldn't, that this brought her no happiness. She felt terribly unfulfilled and she had to take off. Unfortunately, the thing that Karen didn't bring along with her is that just as her parents had led her into a life, she had trusted her parents and they had led her into a life that did not make her happy, she was also now betraying the trust of her children by simply going away, simply vanishing on them. Is there an element there? Perhaps there is an element there of her believing that parental advice isn't worth anything, and maybe she believes that she would have been better off if her parents had just not been around. Maybe I'm doomed to be a bad parent because of the way that I was raised, and they're just going to be better off without me. I can understand that might have been involved in her thought process, while also saying that she's absolutely wrong. She's 100% wrong, and I found it very irritating when she was talking about like taking responsibility for just walking out on all of her responsibilities. I don't know what dreams she went off to follow. She said that she went off to follow her dreams and failed a lot, that she didn't get what she wanted. And yet, she never went home. I guess maybe she felt... Sorry, I shouldn't have said home, because when she left, that was no longer her home. She never went back to the family that she had abandoned. She never attempted to set right what had been the ruins that had been left in her wake. And that's another thing, that deciding to up and leave is the sort of thing that she could have taken steps afterwards to mitigate. And when she's talking about how guilty she feels, apparently never guilty enough to try to reconnect. There's no line of dialogue where she says, I did try to write to you, and Esteban wrote back and said, don't ever talk. No, there was nothing. There was nothing. She just left. And even I was gonna say, and this is maybe a little bit unfair, but even after everything that went down in Seattle, where her kids were out on the lam, she reached out to her parents, but so Esteban, she can't reach out to Esteban. Where's she gonna reach out to her children directly? That's not a fair criticism. I guess she reached out in the only way that she could, but yeah, I really, really, really dislike that explanation. Earlier in the playthrough, I had posited that maybe Karen herself either had developed powers, was starting to develop abilities, was losing control of abilities that she had never properly exercised, and maybe she had chosen to leave for the safety of her own family. That doesn't appear to be true. Nothing that she said here would corroborate that. So very much like with Daniel, where I had supposed that maybe he believed he had killed Sean and then turned to this religious sect to give him guidance and purpose to atone for what he had done, and yet he wasn't all that surprised to see Sean show up. I keep attempting to read, to think of ways for these characters' decisions to make them less bad. I don't know how to put it. They're not acting out of hate. They're acting, you know what it is? They're acting out of a generalized disregard for the well-being of others. Daniel throws people around because he can. He cost his brother his eye. And when he sees that, he's just like, oh, what happened to your eye? Did that happen at the farm? And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. But then right there in the church, he threw him down again. I am not Daniel's brother. So it's easy for me to step back over here and say that Daniel's behavior, his lashing out, has cost so many people so many things. And boy, did I want to say, during that reunion at the church, the first one, when the options were up on the screen, that was like, it wasn't your fault, which it plainly was. It just was. Sean wouldn't have lost an eye if not for Daniel's lashing out. One of the options was it's all in the past, which feels like we're just going to walk right by it. And then the other option was I warned you. And I really wanted to say I warned you, not because I'm a big fan of I told you so's, but because Daniel, he needs to learn this. It's everything that Sean has been trying to teach him. Sean isn't trying to hold Daniel back. Sean, at least in my view, has at every stage been trying to teach Daniel control and consistency and restraint over his powers, because Daniel is capable of doing spectacular things, spectacularly dangerous things. And if he doesn't appreciate the consequences of his actions, people all around him can become terribly hurt. And that's what happened here. Somebody that he claims to care about, that he presents as being important to him, became really, really hurt. But I'm worried that if I say to Daniel that I warned you, that Daniel is going to take it as recrimination. I don't know. Anyway, I feel like that's everything that I have to say about the chapter. I continue to appreciate the way that they change the characters' hairstyles over time. It really helps to underscore the fact that months pass between these episodes. For me, it's a week. For you, depending on when you're watching this, it may be just a few moments. But for the characters, it's several months, sometimes with several. It's usually a month or two between episodes, and they help to underscore that by having the character's hair grow out, or in this case, Sean got, shaven pretty close, and Daniel has this weird sort of bowl cut, and Jacob showed up. I am very relieved that they'd set up that we were going to meet with Jacob. Hey, remember Jacob from the farm? Sometimes he goes by Jake, that guy. Remember him? Because I would not have recognized him whatsoever. And I guess that's it. 5% surprise at the veneration of Finn, because I feel like a lot of my suspicions and concerns about Finn were ultimately proven correct by the end of the previous episode. But also, these characters knew him for a good long time before he turned into a greedy guy who was just like, hey, I can use these powers for my own benefit. So it makes sense that it's easier for me to sort of dump on him than everybody else around him. And I guess maybe the one final thought is that I really would have wanted to look around the Reverend's apartment. You see that I like to read through the journal entries and to examine things in the environment, to hear the dialogue, the descriptions, the thoughts that the character has, Sean has, and I just felt like we gotta be quick. I will also be interested to see in the results screen, is there a statistic for people who remembered to close the filing cabinet and maybe even try to relock the door? I don't know if locking the door would have worked, but I strongly suspect that there would have been an option to... Oh, controller disconnected. That's what happens when I talk so much. To close the filing cabinet. And I bet that we can... I think we're at the end here. I had a lot to say about this episode, so we're just going to let this scroll through. And here we go. Okay. 60% of people passed one of the tests, 9% failed both, and 31% of people were apparently able to tap that pen, so good on them. I absolutely tried. 75% told Agent Flores that the robbery was Finn's idea. Yes, it was. Also, the idea that the robbery was everyone's choice. I do not know what sequence of events would have made that true, which means that either other people had a very different playthrough than I did, or some people just decided to, like, I don't know, man, it was just everyone. It was everyone's idea. I guess none of us, damn it to hell. Hold on a second. Let me just make sure. Sometimes I tug the wire. It looks like everything's okay. Sorry about that. Who knows who was responsible? Maybe that's the decision that I would have made if I had A, liked Finn significantly more than I did, and B, had any role whatsoever in planning the robbery. Third one down, you attacked the guard to escape the hospital. 35% of people. 57% of people escaped the hospital without hurting anyone. I don't know how that was possible. Here's my best guess. This is just a blind guess. I did not pull the railing off the wall at first because I thought that would bring the guard in and I would get immediately caught. Maybe if I had done that and then called Joey and then Joey came in and then the guard fell asleep, or maybe I should have just waited for the guard to go to sleep a second time. Then what does the pipe do? What's the point of the pipe? Can't you just walk out? Could I have just walked out? Hold on a second. Guys, but the door was locked, wasn't it? The door was locked, right? He couldn't have just walked out when the guard fell asleep. Okay, yeah, there was never an open door option. I hope that wasn't it. I'd feel very stupid if the 57% of people just walked out of the room. For 8% of people, Finn was not at the hospital. 40% of people didn't talk to Finn. You talked to Finn and blamed him for what happened in Humboldt, 8%. And then 44%, the highest percentage, talked to Finn and forgave him for what happened. Wow. Yo. I really did wrong by Finn. Yikes. Okay. Well, what happened with Finn. 45%, I was in the slight minority, didn't try to take the toy back, and didn't break it. Okay, I didn't, 55% would have broken Daniel's toy while taking it back from Chad. I wanted to take it back. I guess in my head, whoops. What did it just do? I just saw it flicker a little bit. In my head, I didn't talk about that scene at all. I was worried that trying to fight back against these two dudes, even though Mike, who was the other person, was there, seemed much, much more sympathetic. I was concerned that getting confrontational in any sort of like physical way would escalate things in a way where maybe just their mockery, or specifically Chad's mockery, might have satiated him enough, but I don't know. 44% of people refused to sing and got beat up. 41% of people sang the song in Spanish, and 15% were not asked to sing a song. I wonder if that had to do with trying to get the toy back. No, because it's a way higher percentage. I wonder what else people said that they weren't asked to sing the song. 90% of people got into Anton's truck to reach Haven Point. 10% did not get into the truck and walk to Haven Point. You heard me talk about that at the time. I perceived a near 100% chance that I was going to die if I stayed on that road. It was so hot. There's no reason to believe that he's carrying like several jugs of water. I was really, really worried about that. So that's why I got into the truck. I was like, hey, better the devil I don't know than the one that I do. And this is a devil's highway out here, so I'm going to get into that truck. 68% of people didn't give money to the church. Yeah, no. Absolutely, I wasn't going to give money to the church. First of all, I just walked in. Secondly, I've got like $14 in my wallet. No way. I don't know how much money he actually had, but no. 93% tried to let Karen open up to you. I guess that's because I talked with her. I rather specifically chose a whole variety of options that were very judgmental because I felt like that was true to Sean and, to be blunt, reflected how I was feeling towards Karen during that conversation. 5% of people cut the conversation short, and 2% of people were hard on Karen during the conversation. I thought I was hard on Karen during the conversation. I'd have to look back at some of the other options, but I honestly thought that I was. hard on her. Maybe it was at the very end. Maybe this is part of it. One of the later decisions was an opportunity to reminisce with Karen about all the stuff that they used to do together. But to be honest, I chose that because I feel like that would have been more damning than the forgiveness option. More damning than the you ruined everything, the more accusatory option. Because Karen, things were pretty good, or at least we had good times together. And it could have continued that way. There was no need to cut off communication. We could have continued to have a relationship on some axis that was more favorable, more amenable to you. It was always a possibility, and you chose not to make that happen. So I actually chose that because I thought it was more damning. But moving ahead. 64% of people smoked a cigarette with Karen. I'm honestly surprised that is so high. 28% stayed outside with Karen, and then 8% did not stay outside. 16% refused Karen's help. Oh, with the eye? Yeah, no. There's a couple reasons for that. A few different reasons. A, I wasn't super happy with having asked for the smoke after I was sort of like... It was interesting that my gut reflex was to ask for smoke to help establish that Sean and Karen do have something in common. That he is his mother's son, right? As soon as I did that, I thought to myself, oh, that might have been something of a mistake because Sean had written in his journal, his sketchbook, that he didn't want to have anything to do with her. He didn't want to ask her for anything. So then when it came to will Sean accept Karen's help with his eye, I thought to myself, no. He's not at that place with Karen where she gets to play caring parent. Now, in reality, just for clarity, she would be playing caring person, I feel like. Hey, do you need help with, dressing your wound? Especially in and around the eye, I can imagine that would be very difficult. And it actually would take some courage to even offer assistance for somebody who is effectively a stranger. However, what Sean is going through is no, you don't get to come back and pretend that you care about me. You don't get to come back and pretend to kiss my boo-boos. That's not the way that this works. So he, of course, would have refused that, and that's how I chose to play it, both because of the cigarette and because... Oh, and I guess on a kind of a distant third, it is something that Sean needs to know how to do himself, and he's already done it previously. So he did it in the car and whatever. That's all. That's the way that I was thinking about it. For 58% of people, Nicholas was unaware of your presence. For 42%, you got Nicholas suspicious when sneaking into Haven Point. Okay, I guess I'm glad for that. I don't know what I did that didn't make Nicholas suspicious. Because when he, punched me a whole bunch of times, I did keep getting up. But, yeah, hey, whatever. Stealth check plus. At least we did one thing correctly in the stealth meter. 53% of people shared your money with Jacob. 47% of people didn't give any money to Jacob. I was so close to that 47%. I was so close. Because in my head, we're back on the road now, man. It's not like, Sean goes to the ATM and withdraws the next section of his trust fund or something. That's all the money that he has, and he saved for weeks to get it. But, like I said, Karen's here now. Maybe Karen can pony up for a while. It's not that we get a financial prize because now Mom has shown up. But if Mom really wants to help out, hey, here's a way that you can do it. Because, oh, and just one other thought. When Sean says to Jacob, this'll cover the medical bills. Oh, Sean... Sir, you have not seen a medical bill, I guess. But that's neither here nor there. I would be very surprised if Sarah Lee was covered by any sort of insurance plan. I could be wrong, but it seems to me like that could have been a debilitating bill. But hey, hopefully Jacob got it worked out. And then 68% of people managed to hide from Nicholas. Now, what's interesting here is that it doesn't expose here how many people chose to take Karen up on her distraction technique. So maybe that's the 32-68, but I certainly did. Again, I said this a little bit on our way out. One thing, I've shared a lot of thoughts about Karen in this episode, and none more than, boy, did I not expect Karen to re-enter the story anywhere remotely like this. I thought the kids might go try to find her, and failing that, I did not think that she was going to show up. So there we go. The fact that Karen was able to track Daniel to this, religious cult. But once she did show up, one thing I never questioned for a second is that she was there to, for the best interest of the kids. Not for 1 second did I doubt that. And I said, Sean, you really need to talk with Karen about what's going on with Daniel, because either she knows or she doesn't. And either way, that needs to be shared information here. So when Karen offered her opportunity to make a distraction, I was like, do it. Hit it. And I will also note, I have not closed the door on the idea that Karen herself has some sort of abilities. When Karen goes into the church, she says, Sean, what is this? And all that might mean to me is that Daniel has powers that are different from Karen's. As far as we know, Esteban had no abilities. As far as we know, Sean has no abilities. It doesn't mean that Karen doesn't have abilities and that they might be different than Daniel's. So she walks in and sees a bunch of candles telekinetically floating around. She's trying to work out, like, Sean, what is this? But not in a way of like, oh, wait, one of my children has supernatural abilities. Like, maybe she's started to suspect, but she just assumed that they would be hers. What are her abilities? Fire starting? Like, I'm not being funny. What if she's Drew Barrymore here? What if she can just light things on fire? And that's what happened at whatever that other structure was that lit on fire. I sort of think of that as like the grain silo, except I doubt it wasn't a grain silo. I don't know why that's what it is in my head. Oh, wow. Just a very short page here. 67% of people, you and Daniel, both spared Lisbeth's life. 21% let Daniel unleash his power on Lisbeth while he was hurting her. Okay, well, I'm glad he wasn't hurting her. 9% of people shot Lisbeth while Daniel was hurting her, and 3% shot Lisbeth while Daniel wasn't hurting her. So I guess in my view, we got the best outcome there, and also the majority outcome. 2/3 of people navigated to that particular thing. I said my piece on that. I perceived no purpose or benefit to hurting Lisbeth. I guess just before we hit A to continue, one of the things that I've wanted to instill in Daniel is that when you have the powers that you have, it means you don't need to hurt anyone. There's no point. They can't hurt you. Don't hurt them. Choose not to use your abilities vindictively or maliciously. It's a choice you have, and only you can make it. And if you act out, if you behave badly, unintended consequences come with it. And that's it.
This is it. We made it, Daniel.
What do we do now?
Make our way across. You ready?
Yeah, I think.
And that is it. That is the end of episode 4 of Life is Strange 2. We will be back in 1 week's time to record what I assume is the final episode. I always proceed into these narrative games on the assumption that they are 5 episodes. I haven't looked and don't intend to. And yeah, that's it. I guess we'll see you in 1 week's time. And This, again, this initiative to pre-record these is born out of the fact that I find that narrative games like these are effectively impossible to stream live and to be able to catch up with people and interact with them in real time. So we very much hope that you've been enjoying this journey. And if you are seeing this on the channel, it either means that we have banked enough additional stuff that we'll cover in the event that I have gotten sick, or there's an internet outage, or there's some other thing that is preventing us from doing a regularly scheduled stream, or I'm sick, or there's been some sort of internet outage or something. Because one thing that is very important to us is that as we've stepped into the world of Twitch streaming and people have been subscribed to the channel, we do always think of subscriptions as being an investment in the next 30 days. It's always like, people have subscribed because they want to see the next 30 days of material, and we want to make sure that there's something here for you. So thank you so much for coming with us on this journey. We'll probably address this again at the end of episode 5, but I just wanted to take a quick second to say thank you guys for coming with us on some of these narrative journeys that we've been putting up, and we'll see you again for part 5, episode 5. For us, it'll be in 1 week's time. For you, it may simply be the next video in the playlist. Either way, I hope you are enjoying the journey, and we'll see you again for, I assume, the big finale very shortly. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful night.